Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another Massachusetts Central Radio Show. I'm your humble host, Mike Camone, here for another one of these. I'm here for another one of these. Well, I'm just not here for another one of these. I'm also here for entry 201. I did not do one yesterday, unfortunately, because I was feeling tired. I did one Wednesday, didn't do one Thursday. I did a short Wednesday, and I decided to save it up for a half an hour episode, or maybe a 20-minute to half an hour episode, because it's about 10:37, so I'm probably going to be here maybe 25 minutes-ish. So hello everybody, and welcome back to this great channel, and I welcome you guys back to this awesome channel. You guys hear me? I don't think you guys can, unfortunately, because I'm all the way freaking down there. So yeah, hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to my awesome channel of awesomeness. And I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves and enjoying yourselves well. I know I am. So today is obviously automotive day, and automotive topic day, because that's what I talk about on Saturdays now that this is great. So I'm going to talk about this for maybe about half an hour. I may stretch this out to about an hour on Saturdays if I feel like I have the energy. Or Sundays. Remember, this is also Sunday, and remember, this can be Saturday and Sunday. So, my face just went dark. Like 5 seconds. What the frick? Thank you. Let there be light. Okay, so I have to pick a topic for every time I do this, because you guys love it. Yeah, I noticed you guys have liked it before when I've talked about automotive in the past, when I did Bobby Hunter's tribute video. So I just recently picked up a couple of games lately. So for $40, I picked up Crash and Sane Trilogy. I do not know if I'm going to be doing this live, but I will try to do something. Tonight I may go live on my PS4. I don't know. Don't know what game just yet. I might do this right after I'm finished with this. Half an hour. But yeah, for the next half an hour, or for the next 20, 22, or 23, or 27 minutes, depending on how long I want to yak about this. I want to talk about something. And my topic for tonight is obviously a brand and a team, obviously a brand that goes close to my very heart, and one I've known for many, many years, because my family's owned so many of them over the years. I can count my family has owned GM brands. I'm going to talk about General Motors. Has had General Motors brands since I was young enough to look at cars. I remember the first car I ever went home in. First car I went home in is a little bouncing baby boy. I think I remember the first car was a gray Buick LeSabre 1987. That Buick has since long passed. But I'm going to talk about General Motors, because it is a brand that is dear to my heart. I'm into the racing, and I'm into whatever else. So there's other brands out there that are great, and I'm not gonna bash on any of them. I think there are other great brands out there. There's Ferrari, BMW, Maserati, Porsche, or Porsche, as some people call it, but I'm going to refer to it as Porsche. There's Porsche, well, the English say Porsche, um, but some of the commentators on English television say Porsche. Um, BMW, Aston Martin, Lotus. All these brands are great and everything. I don't dish on any of them because I think every single one of them has a great story. There's also Auto Union, Mercedes. Auto Union was Mercedes. I'll have to have that episode maybe next Saturday, maybe, or maybe one of these Saturdays, maybe one of these Sundays. I'm gonna have to do Auto Union, but my family has owned General Motors brands since I was pretty much born, and pretty much since even before I was born, because I think my dad had General Motors brands. My grandparents had Chevrolets and stuff like that. I know my mother growing up learning how to drive. They had a Chevy Nova. I'm pretty sure in all the stories that my dad's father's told me that they've either had a Buick or a Chevy Impala wagon. I think the car growing up my parents had was a baby blue, a robin egg blue Chevy wagon with a 307 V8 Paraglide back in those days. And that car did everybody from church to gatherings and all this other stuff, and all the other family related stuff back in the 60s and 70s. They had that for many, many years. I think my dad's father had a electric 225 convertible back then, or I think it was a sedan. And I think most of the trucks my dad had when he was actually starting out his business back in the late 70s, early 80s, a lot of them were Chevrolet pickups. We used to have this red pickup that we used to have this red K150, or this K1500 as they called them back then. There were so many model designations. I can remember we had one with dual tanks, a dump body, and one had a fuel filter. That one had a fuel system that was clogged up, and we only had use of one tank. So my dad couldn't use the reserve. It sucked. I think it's because somebody put diesel in the tank or something like that. Something or other. I'll have to ask my dad again. And then my mother had a Buick that used to cart us to and from doctor's appointments, church, and I think that also carted us off to the Cape and Martha's Vineyard when we used to go over. When we used to have a house back then. We'd bring the Tahoe later. My memories of General Motors begins in that 87 gray Buick. That thing shoveled us to school and stuff like that. I mean, I probably went to kindergarten a number of times in that car. When I was old enough, because I think that we owned that 87 Buick till we actually got the Tahoe, which was 1995, and then we got a Buick, and then we got a red Buick. And the Tahoe was actually very instrumental in a lot of our vacations to the vineyard. We used to do Vineyard, Cape, because I remember what we used to do. We used to do Cape early, and then we used to do Vineyard to top it off. So we had two houses. We were actually very fortunate back then. A lot of people thought, oh, there's not too many places you go. We actually were pretty fortunate with what my dad did back then work-wise. We were actually able to do quite a bit, and it allowed us, the work he did allowed him to build a house down the vineyard, also maintain my great uncle Bill's house down the Cape, and I remember that Tahoe. We had the one with the barn doors, not the lift gate, but we had. If for those of you who are old enough to remember, if those of you who grew up in the mid to late '90s, remember the Tahoes that had the barn doors? They used to pull the right one, and the left one used to pull the lever on the left one, and used to swing open. We used to have a kayak. We used to have a kayak on one. We used to have a kayak. We used to have a kayak on one. We used to have a rowboat on the other. But we used to just bring the rowboat a lot because we had a big ass rowboat, a blue and white thing. We used to put that on the top, and if we had the Kellys, friends of ours, they used to have the rowboat. We used to have both kayaks. And during the summer and during the winter years, during the winter seasons, they used to bring They used to bring the kayaks up back to the mainland, and we used to keep the rowboat down the. We used to keep the rowboat in storage, and then when one of us would go down, which would be all the time because we'd share the same house, we would do that, and that carted off all our luggage, all the food we ever did. I remember all the grocery runs we did, but that Tahoe was awesome. We used to go to Costco, for those of you who remember Costco. Costco's still around, but we used to do Costco. That's before my mother discovered BJ's, and stuff like that. I think it was when my dad was ordering and I remember when we were ordering the 90. I think when we were ordering the Buick. I figured if it was the Buick or if it was the Camaro. Not the Camaro. My dad has a Camaro now, but I remember when I was young, and I must have been about 6 years old, and I remember we went into the dealership at not Howard Chevrolet. Howard Chevrolet is where we got our 2006. Is where we got our 2006. It's where we got our 2006 Tahoe. And that one had a lift gate. We no longer have a Tahoe anymore. My brother has that. So it's the vehicles have passed on to the family, and the Buick 95 that we got passed on to my brother Chuck, and my brother Miles. My dad used it for a little bit. I remember I went to a few proms and a few Buicks in my time. I'm pretty sure my friend, my then girlfriend Megan, who is a friend of mine now, I think her father had a Buick LeSabre red. And I think they were all Fords now. You know, they were Ford family. We were a Chevy family back then. But, you know, we never got into any fights because, you know, we all had our brands. But yeah, I remember going to a few problems in that 95 Buick. Unfortunately, tires deflated and is currently receiving rust. It is now a parts car. Unfortunately, I would have loved to have taken it off my brother's hands and restored it. But the motor was all gooked up. My dad didn't use it, and we had to get and that's the reason why we got the Impala that we have now. But yeah, I remember in 95, 94, 95 when we got the Impala. When we got the Tahoe. In 95, I remember going to the Chevrolet dealership back in 95. And I remember seeing two cars that I would love to drive in my lifetime, and I would become fans of. I remember there was an Impala SS. Sitting right here. A Chevy Caprice, 4-door. I remember the Chevy Caprice, and then the Impala SS that was only made from like 93 to 96, and it was cut out. And I remember looking at the black SS, and then further over there was a 2-door car, and I remember a wedge-shaped car back then. If you guys can't tell by the description, there was a 2-door sports car that was kind of shapely, kind of curvy. That was the Camaro. We actually got to sit in the Camaro, actually. I remember sitting in the Camaro for the first time, and I was an impressed little. I was probably 7 years old at the time, but I never knew it. But I was sitting in a piece of automotive history, and I remember my dad saying something along the lines of like, "Oh, what are these days?" I'm like, usually the kids never like to come out. Usually, and I think the salesman went to my father like, usually the kids aren't aware of what the cars are, or they'll gravitate towards what it is. The reason why the Camaro was open back then is because the dealerships allowed that back then. Nowadays you have to ask permission to go do that, and it sucks because none of the dealers are good enough to do that. They want you to be serious about buying it. I think the last time I sat in dealership cars was in 2010. I've since been able to sit in cars because of the auto show in Boston, which is usually every January. Unfortunately, it did not happen this year because A, I was busy, B, COVID restrictions, so that they couldn't really do that this year. They did it in April, but I kind of missed it, unfortunately, because of work and stuff like that, and my parents are busy. But hopefully next year, next January, when things are slightly back to normal, maybe not. So yeah, but yeah, I remember doing that. So, and then I remember looking up to the Corvette. I remember walking over to the Corvette, and I remember pulling the door, and I remember my mom pulling the door handle, like, "Oh, the vet's locked." And I remember the salesman was like, "Oh, no, we just don't let anybody enter that." And I think it was up for sale. So I think it was a coupe. I don't know if it was a ZR1 or a regular one, but I could tell that it was just, I could tell it was just a neat looking car. And holy hell, it would actually inspire me to like Corvettes, actually. I've been a Corvette fan since the I've liked Corvettes, literally, I've liked it or not. Basically, I've been a Corvette guy since like 2002, 2003. So yeah, I think I remember every time I went to a dealership, I was into Corvettes. So, and I remember one time when we had to get one of the cars serviced. I think it might have been I think it either was the Tahoe when it was getting super old. I remember at Howard Chevrolet, I think I got a chance to look at a Corvette and sit in it, because they actually opened it up at this time for you. That was also a very cool thing. So that probably started my love of Corvettes, stuff like that. And General Motors in particular has always been a sign of progress in life, because technically Chevrolet is your typical middle class car. As long as you work hard enough, you're going to be able to afford certain cars. I always thought the small little compacts like the Chevy Cavalier, was the two-door sedan. It was a two-door sedan, two-door coupe that pretty much solidified that this is your starter car. So this is the car that you paid 14, 15 grand. Well, back then it was 10, 15 grand. 10, 15 grand. Now a mid-sized compact costs about 15, 20 grand now. Now, and Chevrolet doesn't even make an entry-level sedan anymore, which stinks. And I think they should go back to it, because and they're always like, "Oh, people want crossovers." I still want a four-door sedan to buy, and it's a shame, because in order to do that, I have to go to the Germans, the Koreans, the Koreans, and the Japanese. Which I don't know about you guys, but I love the Japanese brands. I think they're cool, but I don't want to be sitting there. So, and it's and Chevrolet has influenced my life because it obviously turned me into what the automotive loving guy I always am. And it actually, in 2004, I actually became a fan of not only the Corvette, but Corvette racing. So, and I've been a Corvette racing fan since 2005. So almost over 16 years, I've been a Corvette racing fan, and I've always watched the Corvette racing team from the factory kick Ferrari, BMW, Maserati, Aston Martin, Dodge, because of the Vipers. Fun fact, I was actually into the Vipers when I was young. I actually liked the Vipers. I was actually a big Viper fan back in the day. I'll have to say that for I'll actually have to save that for another story. The story for another day. I was actually a big Viper fan back in the early to mid 2000s, and then because I always thought the Viper was so cool. I always thought the Viper was the meanest looking thing on the road. And then eventually I actually discovered the Corvette. And I discovered that it was, it was the everyman sports car and you could afford it. The Viper was always that car that you could never reach because it was so expensive. It was hand built. I always liked the Vet because it was just that much more obtainable. Because when I was a kid, you could drive off the showroom for $30,000. You could drive a Corvette off the showroom for as little as $35,000 back in 1995, I believe it was. And the ZR1 was like 57 to 60 grand. I remember it was the top tier one. I never saw a ZR1 when I was a kid, and I never would because it was. And I remember seeing a bunch of convertibles, and I was aware of the Mustang, but I wasn't into it because I thought that the Corvette was the only. Because I thought the Corvette and the Camaro were the only cars ever to be made. I thought that was the greatest thing. Yeah, I knew about the Viper, but I thought the Viper was cool. I thought the Mustang was just the oddest looking thing in the world. I was like, this thing is. Because back in 1995, I'm not gonna lie, the Mustang looked kind of plain, and I'm like, and I was always like, oh, that just looks like the car I saw at the dealership when I was a little kid. I never liked the SN95. I never liked the SN95 look. I particularly liked the later versions of the Mustang. I liked it the 1999. I liked the 1999 on body style, but it never quite caught my attention because it never looked like one of the old ones. It just looked like this big blocky thing, whereas the Corvette just looked like a big chiseled car. Swooping lines, great Rory engine, awesome looking body. Like the swimsuit models we used to look at in the Sports Illustrated magazines back in those days, back before I knew what a girl was. To be honest, yeah, I didn't know. I knew the difference between male and female back then, like Goku, ish. So, but yeah, General Motors for more for less has had an influence, which is why my first car, hopefully, when I get my license, either at the beginning or the middle of next year, hopefully it's a Chevrolet, a Buick, or hopefully it's a Chevrolet or a Buick or something with 4 doors and something that I can obviously afford and maintain, and something that runs, preferably. So yeah, and hopefully I don't have to pay $5 million gajillion for it, because by then I'm gonna have enough money to afford a car. So yeah, so right now I actually have to owe my life for automotive, for all things automotive. If I didn't discover Chevrolet, if I didn't discover how good that was, I wouldn't have figured it out. I would have loved cars. My love for cars wasn't. I didn't really like the idea of being in a car, head of a car business or being head of General Motors. That was my dream, but then I wanted to help people, and we saw how that happened. We saw how I had to deal with a bunch of stuff the last couple of years, and it kind of sidetracked me, and now I want to do automotive again. So because I have the old me back, I also want to do automotive as well. But that still doesn't mean I'm not going to help people along and help people do well. And cars has obviously helped me connect with a lot of people. People in my family. My dad's dad was a mechanic. My mom's dad was a mechanic. We actually have only one Corvette in the family. My Uncle Billy. He owned a 68 Corvette with a 327 and a shift kit. Unfortunately, he had to sell that for a four-door sedan because his days of running free were over, and he had to be the responsible man, and he had to obviously save gas and stuff like that. I forget what happened to it. He either wrecked it or he blew the engine, one or the other. And great car. I wish we had still in the family. So it is proof that we have owned Corvettes in the family, and we've owned fast cars in the family. My uncle Bill was into Pontiac. Was into Pontiac back in the day. That's the reason why he owned a couple of Bonnevilles back then. He owned a couple of Bonnevilles back then. He owned a couple Fords, but he owned a couple Bonnevilles. He owned a Corvette, a couple of Bonnevilles. I don't know if he ever owned a Trans Am, but because everybody did, because Burt Reynolds, back in those days. So General Motors has had a effect on my family, and it's had an effect on who we are. So yeah, and it's helped me forge a new career path for 2023 and beyond. Because in 2025, when I finish my automotive degree and I learn about cars and I get into the Tesla program, hopefully, or whatever big manufacturer, I'm going to study and obviously go to school for all that. If I need to do hybrid technology at some school for an automotive brand, I will. I'm currently looking at different programs, so which I'm going to have to do sooner rather than later. I'm going to have my decision made on a school by early or mid to late 2022. So I have time, but I don't have a heck of a lot of time because fall 2023 is going to be here, and I can't lollygag around. So that's the reason why I'm starting this automotive series, and I'm doing it well. And I'm saving up money to live on my own. And with things returning back to normal, thanks to the vaccine rolling out at record pace here in the United States, we hopefully can go back to school and we won't have any problems. But yeah. So yeah, I'm waiting for everything to even out in the next year or two with COVID and my finances and stuff like that. So, yeah. If you guys want to know any Chevrolet related videos, I have a 1x24 model of a Corvette. I think it has 279 views or something. 279 views. Is the most watched video on my channel. If you guys don't believe me, you guys need convincing. You need some convincing. You guys, I have to give you guys an offer you can't refuse. What's this freaking videos most popular? 253 views. That was over a year ago. Crypto. December, well, technically it was over a year and a half ago because it was December 2019. Yeah, so 253 views for my for that radio show Control. So I think you guys will. So I think that is the reason why I'm doing this automotive section, because you guys might like this a little bit better, and you guys might like my personal taste on stuff like this. So, yeah, General Motors has had an influence. So this is more of my history with General Motors, and why I've loved it, what it's how it's my experiences with it, and what I've done with it and stuff like that. General Motors, if General Motors did not come out with their cars, we probably wouldn't have the Buick. We probably wouldn't have had the Buick LeSabre, which unfortunately died a horrible death in the last decade. Thank you, General Motors, for killing off maybe one of the best selling four-door sedans ever in the history of your brand. the Chevy Tahoe line, which started the GMC Denali, which my parents actually have. My dad's amazing work trucks, which I've had the pleasure of actually being in and actually working out of early last year because of because not only because of the pandemic, but because my bosses were freaking stupid with their hours. Thank you Target for giving me a chance to ride in the passenger seat of a Chevrolet or GMC truck. Never thought I'd say that in my lifetime. Never thought I'd ask you guys for that. And it also carts me to and from work. And hopefully a General Motors car will cart me to and from work at some point when I get my license. And I will get my license because I'm working towards this. I'm reading the book. I'm definitely going to have to read a little bit tonight because my life's stable. I'm earning more money. And I'm feeling happy again. And things are feeling awesome. It's good to have all my friendships like I did. And we're starting to really communicate with each other. And more than others. Tom and I were just playing things by ear. Meg and I are talking every couple of weeks. April and I are talking every time I try to get anytime I try to comment about something. And, can I just say, can I just say one thing about Pepsi Blue? I am going to say this with a heavy heart, but Pepsi, you're great and all, but I have a problem with something, and it is called So I'm just gonna say no to Pepsi Blue. So, it's great stuff. It's great stuff, and it's very, it's amazing that they have something like this. But I'm just gonna say, there's one brand out there that is very reliable and stuff like that. It's Pepsi and Pepsi. Well, actually, there's a really good allegory there because Pepsi and Coca-Cola are kind of like Chevrolet. They're kind of mainstays in automotive history versus them. And I wish they wouldn't screw with that because So yeah, I'm just gonna say live and let live. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I might do a I haven't commented or said anything. Well, actually, I did comment on something or that April did. So, yeah. I just want to say, guys, thank you guys for listening to me yak a little bit about General Motors and what my history has been like, and and stuff like that. Hopefully they keep on living, and maybe I will be with them if they continue their plug-in hybrid stuff. So, or maybe I'll be with Tesla. Well, we'll see what I do when I go back to school. It's going to be interesting to see which direction I go with them. So, or with certain things, but for right now, I'm just going to say this, folks. Oh, yes. By the way, hopefully Chevy wins the Indy 500 tomorrow. So Scott Dixon's on pole for Honda, but I'm hoping one of the Chevy guys hopefully Ed Carpenter or Rinus VeeKay or maybe one of the Penske guys that's going to come up out of nowhere and is going to win it, because we never know. Scott Dixon looks like a race time favorite, but you never know, because the Indy 500 is not like just some simple oval race. It's completely different. So cheers to the Chevy teams, actually, and thanks to that one. For those of you who don't know, just to close out, Penske is the reason why Chevrolet's had a lot of success in the Indianapolis 500, because of his Ilmor engines back in the mid-90s, early 2000s, before he switched to Mercedes and completely ruined his program. And he had to switch to Honda, which he's been doing for the last 15 years. So yeah, I hope for the best for the Chevrolet teams, and I hope you guys learned something. You guys learned about my taste in cars, and just what the Chevrolet brand means to me, and what the history of it is, and how instrumental it has been in my life. Maybe in another one on Saturday I'll tell you something else. But yeah, you guys are going to get the general gist of what I like. So even though this was a weird one, I talked about different time periods in my life. You guys know what General Motors it means, and it not only powered my childhood and my teen years to become interested. So the reason why I talk about this is because this is the brand that got me. General Motors is the brand that got me into cars. I know the Dodge Viper did, but the Dodge Viper was always unobtainable, and I always hated it after I learned about the Corvette. So yeah, the Viper helped spawn it was kind of like how when I helped Tom Gilkey, my good friend back in high school, how it spawned my love to help other people, and it's helped me help my friends through various hard times. Talking about cars and being into cars has obviously helped me through some tough times, and has helped me make a decision in my life, and has made me realize that I do have potential left in my life, and I want to use it before it is completely gone. So yeah, folks, I'm gonna do this one to do. Long live America. God bless America. Long live the automotive industry. Pray for my friends. Also pray for all my loved ones out there. Let them all stay strong. Let them go through a speedy recovery. And let's also pray for the souls that we've lost to either COVID or natural causes. I bid you guys all good night. This is Automotive Talk number 3. General Motors and my influences. I end the broadcast for tonight.